Brooklyn trash compactor. Late on January 31, 2026, Michelle Montgomery, 39, a mother of 4 from the Gowanus houses in Brooklyn, spent the evening drinking with friends before making her way to the Borinquen Plaza public housing complex at 330 Bushwick Avenue in Williamsburg. Security cameras captured her entering the building at approximately 1:39 in the morning, despite the fact that she had no known connection to the complex, which sat more than 4 miles from her home. At some point after entering, she made her way to the upper floors, and residents later reported hearing chilling screams echoing from the direction of the trash chute shaft during the night. No one located the source. Investigators concluded she had likely dropped her purse into the chute and reached in to retrieve it, losing her balance and sliding headfirst down the vertical shaft into the basement compactor. Her leather purse and identification were recovered near the chute opening, supporting that theory. Trapped inside the compactor system, she was crushed, along with the building's garbage as the machinery cycled. Around 9:40 in the morning on February 1st, NYCHA maintenance workers noticed an unusually heavy bag in the basement collection area, opened it, and discovered dismembered human remains, prompting an immediate 911 call and a major response from the NYPD. The medical examiner confirmed she had been alive when the compactor activated. The Office of Chief Medical Examiner and the NYPD ultimately concluded her death was a tragic accident, not a homicide, though the case prompted public outcry over housing infrastructure and building safety in New York City's public housing system. Lobby elevator crush. On August 22, 2019, Samuel Charles Weisbrunn, 30, a software sales professional who had moved to New York from suburban Milwaukee, rode the elevator down from his apartment at the Manhattan Promenade, a 23-story building at 344 3rd Avenue in Kips Bay. It was a routine Thursday morning, and he was heading out to work. The elevator reached the lobby and its doors opened. 2 passengers stepped out ahead of him, and Weisbrunn moved forward to exit. As he stepped toward the lobby, the car suddenly began to drop, with its doors still open. Security footage captured his final seconds. He braced himself in the doorway, one arm out and one leg reaching toward the lobby floor, desperately trying to escape as the car plunged beneath him. The elevator continued descending toward the basement, crushing him between the car and the shaft wall, while fellow residents inside the car and in the lobby looked on in horror. FDNY units arrived within minutes and worked to free the passengers still trapped below, while NYPD and EMS attempted to reach Weisbrunn from the lobby. He was pronounced dead at the scene from fatal crushing injuries. Subsequent investigations revealed a long history of tenant complaints about the building's elevators, including swaying cars and doors that failed to open and close properly. In May of 2019, just months before his death, the Department of Buildings had found that a door zone safety restrictor had been tampered with on a different elevator in the same building, issuing a cease-use order and a fine. The building owner faced significant legal action from Weisbrunn's family, who alleged years of negligence. Subway door dragging. On October 24, 2022, Joseph Ancona, 20, a stagehand working in the electric construction shop at the Metropolitan Opera, finished his shift and made his way into the 59th Street Columbus Circle station during the Monday evening rush hour. Around 4:55 in the afternoon, he hurried along the southbound platform to catch a departing 1 train heading home to Westwood, New Jersey. As the doors began to close, he ran to board. Either his clothing or his backpack became caught as the train pulled out of the station. Witnesses and investigators later described him being dragged along the platform edge, then pulled onto the tracks as the train accelerated. He was struck and suffered fatal trauma. NYPD and EMS responded to reports of a person under a train just before 5 in the afternoon and found him on the tracks. Despite rapid efforts, he was pronounced dead at the scene. MTA leadership called it a terrible accident with no criminal element, while investigators reviewed whether the conductor had maintained the required view of the platform through the cab window as the train departed. The Metropolitan Opera issued a heartfelt statement mourning the loss of a careful and well-liked young employee, and his family shared tributes that turned a transit statistic into the specific story of a 20-year-old killed while simply trying to get home from work. By the way, if you find this content informative, I cover stories like these regularly on this channel. Consider subscribing if you'd like to see more. Now back to the video. Midtown steam explosion. On July 18, 2007, thousands of office workers poured out of Midtown towers near Grand Central Terminal as the evening rush hour began. Beneath Lexington Avenue, an 83-year-old 24-inch Con Edison steam pipe installed in 1924 as part of Manhattan's hidden high-pressure steam network, was pushed beyond its limits. At 5:56 in the afternoon, the pipe catastrophically failed. A geyser of boiling steam, mud, and debris erupted from the street, blasting a 25-foot-wide crater into the asphalt and sending a column of vapor 30 to 40 stories into the air near East 41st Street and Lexington Avenue. Panic swept the sidewalks as commuters and tourists assumed a terrorist attack. Cars were swallowed by the crater, including a tow truck whose 21-year-old driver suffered severe burns over most of his body. Lois Ellen Baumerick, 51, a director of employment compliance at Pfizer, who had recently transitioned to what her colleagues describe as her dream job after nearly 3 decades at AT&T, was just leaving Pfizer's headquarters on East 42nd Street when the explosion erupted around her. She complained of severe chest pain, collapsed while fleeing, and was rushed to Bellevue Hospital. She died of cardiac arrest on the way, becoming the explosion's sole fatality. Approximately 40 to 45 others were injured. Tests later confirmed asbestos in the debris, prompting a prolonged cleanup and significant public health concerns. Con Edison faced intense scrutiny over its aging underground infrastructure, and investigations made clear that terrorism played no role in the disaster. Tribeca crane collapse. On February 5, 2016, a snowy and windy Friday morning, crews were operating a 565-foot crawler crane near 60 Hudson Street in Tribeca, Lower Manhattan. With conditions deteriorating around 8 in the morning, workers made the decision to secure the crane by lowering the boom, a process that required careful, methodical execution. Instead, as workers began retracting, the enormous boom tipped and then dropped into a free fall, raking along adjacent buildings and ripping through street infrastructure below as it came down along Worth Street. On the sidewalk below, David Wicks, 38, a Prague-born mathematician and Harvard graduate who worked as a computer trader and had immigrated to the United States as a teenager, was walking to work. 330 tons of steel slammed down the block and crushed him to death. The collapsing crane demolished parked cars, injured at least 3 other pedestrians, including Dawn Kojima, who required staples in her head and suffered severe leg injuries, and ruptured a water main, forcing emergency evacuations across several surrounding blocks. FDNY and EMS quickly reached Wicks, but pronounced him dead at the scene. Mayor Bill de Blasio, calling it something of a miracle that more lives were not lost, immediately ordered all 376 crawler cranes in the city to be secured pending review. Multi-agency investigations and civil litigation subsequently examined whether wind restraint protocols and city oversight had been adequate for operating such large equipment in deteriorating winter conditions. Midtown facade fall. On December 17, 2019, around 10:45 in the morning, Erica L. Tishman, 60, a prominent architect and community leader from the Upper East Side, was walking south along 7th Avenue near West 49th Street, just north of Times Square, on her way to work. As she passed the southeast corner of the intersection, a piece of terracotta masonry broke loose from high on the facade of the 17-story building at 729 7th Avenue and plunged downward. The fragment struck Tishman directly in the head, knocking her to the sidewalk as bystanders screamed and fled. Emergency responders arrived within minutes in the heart of Midtown, but found her beyond help. She was pronounced dead at the scene from massive head trauma. Department of Buildings inspectors, arriving shortly after, found cracked masonry and missing terracotta pieces above the 15th floor, confirming long-standing deterioration. Records then revealed that the building's owner, Himmel and Marengoff Properties, had been issued a Class 1 violation on April 29, 2019, specifically for damaged terracotta, posing a falling hazard to pedestrians below. The fine for that open violation was approximately $1,250. The owner had paid the fine without undertaking the necessary repairs. Only after Tishman's death did the owner rush to install a sidewalk shed and begin facade work. Her family and safety advocates publicly condemned her death as entirely preventable, the direct result of a known hazard that had been documented, fined, and ignored. Central Park Branch. On February 25, 2010, during one of New York City's snowiest Februaries on record, Elmaz Kira, 46, an Albanian immigrant and father of 2 who worked as a steward and busboy at the New York Athletic Club on Central Park South, finished his shift and began his walk home. As he often did, he decided to cut through Central Park. Around 3:25 in the afternoon, he walked along Literary Walk near 69th Street and 5th Avenue, beneath towering American elms that lined the path. The trees were heavily burdened with more than 20 inches of wet, clinging snow, deposited during the ongoing nor'easter. Without any warning, a large snow-laden branch snapped from one of the elms and plummeted several stories, striking Kira directly on the head. A passerby found him lying motionless on the path and called 911. Responders arrived to find him with devastating blunt force head trauma. EMS pronounced him dead at the scene. His family in Dyker Heights, Brooklyn, was devastated. Kira had brought his family from Albania a decade earlier, worked long hours, and regularly met his children in the park after his shifts. Friends described him as a devoted husband and father, who took that same walk home countless times before. His death contributed to ongoing legal and public scrutiny of the Central Park Conservancy's tree inspection practices, ultimately becoming part of a broader pattern of limb fall cases in the park that led to multi-million-dollar settlements and calls for improved maintenance budgets. Madison Avenue Elevator. On December 14, 2011, around 10 in the morning, Suzanne Hart, 41, director of new business, content, and experience at the advertising firm Young & Rubicam, entered the lobby of 285 Madison Avenue and approached the elevator bank as she had done countless times before. Two coworkers were already inside an open car when she stepped forward, placing one foot inside the elevator and keeping the other on the lobby floor. In a catastrophic malfunction, the car suddenly shot upward with its doors still open, trapping her body between the elevator floor and the shaft wall as the car wedged itself between the first and second floors. The two passengers inside were pinned and forced to witness the event as the car ground to a halt. Building workers and FDNY crews worked to reach her, but it took hours before her body could be removed from the shaft. The other two occupants were hospitalized for severe psychological trauma. Investigators learned that technicians from Transcell Elevator Inc. had performed electrical maintenance on the elevator just hours before the incident, and the probe centered on whether safety circuits had been inadvertently disabled during that work. A door interlock system that should have prevented any movement while the doors remained open became the central focus of the investigation. Records showed the building had accumulated more than 50 elevator violations over 11 years, though officials stated that none directly predicted this specific failure. Young & Rubicam's CEO emailed staff calling it a tragic day, describing Hart as deeply beloved inside the agency. Construction shaft fall. On May 5, 2015, at approximately 12:40 in the afternoon, Christian Genesi, 25, a construction worker employed by an elevator subcontractor, rode a temporary lift up the nearly finished Ryu Plaza Times Square Hotel at 301 West 46th Street with one other worker. They were tasked with installing elevator door frames on the upper floors of what would become a 29 to 31-story luxury hotel. Near the 24th floor, the lift car stalled approximately 5 feet above the landing, leaving both men suspended inside a shaft that coworkers described as essentially an open vertical drop with little permanent safety equipment installed. The two decided to jump down the 5 feet to the landing below. The first worker made it safely. When Genesi attempted the same move, he lost his footing and fell backward into the open shaft behind him, plunging more than 20 stories to the cellar level at the base of the building. Rescue workers took approximately 20 minutes to reach him at the bottom of the shaft. He was rushed to Bellevue Hospital in critical condition, but was pronounced dead at approximately 1:26 in the afternoon, less than an hour after the fall, from massive trauma. The Department of Buildings issued a full stop work order and a Class 1 aggravated violation for failure to safeguard workers. The case became emblematic of a documented spike in deadly construction accidents across New York City and contributed to intensified OSHA enforcement and broader calls for mandatory fall protection standards on active construction sites throughout the 5 boroughs. If you found value in this, a subscription helps me continue researching these stories. Thanks for watching.